Well, we want to welcome you all to this introductory talk. My name is Charlie Ross. I've been a physician in Oregon for about 49 years. And my first 33 to 5 years, my patients really never got better.
Charlie, can Diane make a couple?
Yeah, so we're going to let you know what we're doing, Eugene Plant-Based Providers. I'm going to have Scott tell you about that.
Yeah. So before Charlie and I introduce ourselves and go into the talk, we'll just want to just housekeeping things and just to thank the Compassionate Living is the nonprofit that's putting on this event. So we want to thank them. And then also all the different talks here, we want to make sure that, don't interpret anything here as medical advice and that you contact your medical provider before making any kind of dietary lifestyle changes, because it can be very powerful. I've had many patients that were, I had to lower their blood pressure medicines, their insulin, their diabetes medications because their blood pressure dropped very low or their blood sugar dropped very low. So it's very, very significant treatment. So just want to give those two main disclosures and discuss before we get started. But that was it for the housekeeping.
Okay, we have a number of people who are going to be speaking throughout the afternoon. Some of them are in the audience with you. I'm feeling very comfortable because I've met a number of people who I've known for years who keep following us around. And it actually feels really good, feeling the love from you all. And for those of you who are new and don't know about us, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. We're here to answer your questions, and that's the main thing that we want to do. We want to share with you the kind of activities that we're doing. And so I'm going to introduce myself. Again, it's Charlie Ross. I'm an osteopathic physician. Just got board certified in lifestyle medicine, which was one of the newest specialties in medicine. Most physicians and medical providers really don't have much training in food as medicine and lifestyle medicine. They kind of get words that say you should help people transition to healthier choices, eat healthier, move more. But they don't really, in their medical school and residency training, generally get the information as to how to help a patient make those transitions. So my life was changed about 13 years ago. Sanjay Gupta, a physician, changed my life. I thought I knew what healthy eating was, and I was wrong. I actually used to laugh at one of my colleagues who worked with me in the emergency department in Roseburg. I laughed because he would eat salad for lunch, and I said, how can you live on just eating salad? And I just really had no clue. But Sanjay Gupta came along. He reviewed a study at the Cleveland Clinic, which is documented in this book right here, How to Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. They took end-stage heart patients who'd had one heart attack after another or another stent. They were on maximal medical therapy. 5 of them had been told, you better get your affairs in order. You're probably not going to live the year out. Well, these people who were placed on a whole food, plant-based diet, essentially a vegan diet, nothing that you don't eat anything that has a mother, anything that has a face, and no processed oils or no processed foods or free oils, put them on this, and they all lived 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Except for one guy. One guy, after 6 years, says, I feel so good, I'm going to go back and eat like I used to. He wound up with another bypass. He lived and went back on Esselstyn's program. And my wife, who's sitting in the front row right now, looks over at me in our front room and says, should we do this? And my thought was, there is no way I'm going to do this. I mean, I'm 63 years old, 13 years ago, and I love what I'm eating. And what's the sense in living if you can't enjoy what you're eating? And I enjoy what I'm eating. In fact, I enjoy it so much I can't go to bed unless I have a couple tablespoons of ice cream, like Rocky Road or something with chocolate in it, every single night. And, you know, I can eat any cookie, brownie, anything that's sweet. Even if I've just eaten a full meal, I'm never satisfied, so to speak. So she says, should we do this? And I'm like, no. And then there's a little voice in my head, on my shoulder, that says, Charlie, your wife's dad died in his early 40s, first heart attack. He didn't have a second chance. Your wife's mother and brother have both had their chests cracked for the bypassing, and your wife is next in line. She may not survive this. Do you want a new wife? Well, I thought about that for a moment. And it was an easy decision because I love my wife, and I still do very much. But I did not want to change my diet. So I came up with this compromise. I could do this for a month. And if she's getting along good, I didn't think it would be really healthy to do this. If she's doing good, she can keep doing it, and I'm going to go eat how I want to eat. Now, she laughs at me because she says, who do you think has been cooking for you all these years? So I was going to keep eating like she was making, whatever she was making. But that was my thought process. So we read through this book. We watched Forks Over Knives. Most of you know about that. And after that, the following day, we packaged everything up into bags and boxes, and we gave it to our kids. We didn't realize we were giving them poison at the time. I didn't think it would make a difference in my life. But my wife went online and she bought, I don't know, 10, 15 different kinds of beans and lentils and rices and things I'd never even heard of. Red Carmague rice and Swedish brown beans and adzuki beans and a black rice, the forbidden rice. And she, wanted to have a variety of foods to make this an interesting experience. I was never hungry for one day that first month, totally full all the time. And at the end of the month, my weight was like 10 pounds less. Now I'm 35 pounds lighter. And my cholesterol level is what made me jump up and down like, wow. Went from 248 to 240 to 148. 1 month, 30 days of only eating whole plant foods. Foods is grown in nature. No processed foods. Just foods is grown in nature. And so I said I might do this for another month. And now it's 13 years. And, I'm 76 now, and I've got plenty of energy. We walk 3 miles a day together, my wife and I. Oh, by the way, she has no evidence of heart disease. How great is that? So, that's why I continue to do this. But there's another reason I continue to do this. For the first year, I was so excited, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And I talked to the neighbors and people my dad was teaching dance lessons to down in Roseburg. And I talked to people at work and told them about the benefits that I had from changing what I was eating. And over the next year, 4 of those people actually lost weight, got off of their blood pressure medicine or their diabetic medicine. They were getting healthy. And so after a year of seeing the benefits others were getting and the benefits I had, I said, enough emergency medicine already. I need to do preventive medicine. So I started teaching free community classes. And we taught these classes. 3 people came to the first class. Then 20 people. It was a series of 18 classes, then 40, then 80, then 135. And now, down in Roseburg, they've continued those classes. They have become a blue zone, and there are members from Roseburg, and we're happy to see you, Janice in particular, forever. I've known you. And in the last classes, 150, 60, 70 people between the in-person and online are signing up for these classes in Roseburg, which is only 25,000 people, actually, compared to Eugene Springfield. And it's hard for us to get 20 people to come to a class up here, but we're working on it. And it's going to take time, and pretty soon there will be enough of your doctors and providers, physician associates and nurse practitioners who are going to get this and going to start people referring to the classes. But the other reason I told you that I'm doing this is I got to put this down because I got to show you some cards and letters. So here are cards and letters. Yeah, here's cards, letters. And then there's a whole slew of, what are these? Emails that I printed out. I never used to get this many. I'd get 1 or 2 a year. What do you think they're saying? Yes.
Thank you for teaching me how to eat clean.
Yeah, for helping me get off of my pills, for helping me get rid of my blood pressure medicine, or reverse diabetes, or kidney function. There are 3 of them that said I've gone from stage 3 kidney disease to above 60, which is in the normal function range. And there were 3 very happy people who told me about how their significant others' erectile dysfunction went away after 4 to 6 months. They were especially happy letters. So now I wait. I do this for these people because many of these people actually made the transition. They lost weight. They got rid of many of their pills, and then they had no support. So what happened? They went back to the same choices and wound up regaining the weight, needing to get back on their blood pressure pills. And so we've been teaching these classes, Scott Wagnon and I, and we met. One of the people came up to my class when I was in Oak Ridge and said, what you're teaching, my doctor provider is sharing with me down in Eugene area. I said, I got to meet him. So we talked on the phone. He came up to see a couple classes. He started his own down here. We combined forces, and through the pandemic, we've been doing online classes every single week together. What has this resulted in? We're teaching classes throughout the community now. That would be at the Grange every Friday night. We're doing Springfield Wednesday afternoon, 3 to 4:30. We're doing online Zoom every week on Tuesday from 7 to 8:30. We're doing YMCA and Willamette Lane, and we're doing Campbell Center and sometimes churches and temples, and we're going to Vida, we're going to Corvallis, we have talks scheduled there. We are really trying to spread the word and provide a tribe where people can come and get the support that they need, because it's one thing to learn what to do, to try to do it for a while, but we don't want this to be like a New Year's resolution that just dissolves after a week or a 2 or a month that you've made attempts and then you don't have the support. We want to have the support in this community that we can really grow this into kind of a grassroots and train the other doctors and people, the providers. So with that said, I think I've talked enough. I'm going to have Scott talk for as long as he wants. Then we're going to kind of get into just a little bit of how our foods have changed, which you think you'll find interesting. And then we'll answer your questions and have fun together. with you all.
Sounds good. Thanks, Charlie. All right. So I'm Scott Wagnon. I'm a physician assistant associate, so officially the name changed, for 20 years, actually. And my journey started 12 years ago. Actually, I'm always a year behind Charlie as far as making my change, and my change was a little more gradual. So my background was used to be a professional bicycle racer. So I went to Olympic trials in '88. I went and raced on a team in Spain in 1990. So I was always really physically fit and whatnot. But then I wasn't racing anymore into my 30s and 40s. But by the time I was late 30s, early 40s, I was doing a lot of long distance cycling. I wasn't competitive anymore, but I was still knocking out like 7,000 miles a year on my bicycle. In fact, in 2012, that year I did do 7,000 miles on my bike that year. And in fact, I rode my bike with a friend from Eugene to San Francisco in 6 days. So we did kind of the 130 miles a day. And so it was really up to physical challenges. But I wasn't really healthy. I was actually 46 pounds heavier than I am right now at that time. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, I had prediabetes on my blood work. I had irritable bowel syndrome symptoms every day. I had heartburn symptoms every day, but could ride all day long, really. So I had, good physical activity, good sleep, good, stress management, social support, avoiding, I didn't drink or smoke excessively, any of that stuff. Didn't smoke at all, beer here and there, but at that time. So I felt like, gosh, I really have a pretty healthy lifestyle. Why do I have all these health problems? Wasn't on medications for any of that yet, and it's kind of one of the blessings and curses of being a medical provider is you kind of see your own future through your patients. Like, oh gosh, I'm not on meds yet, but it's going to be pretty soon. I'm going to be high. I'm going to have diabetes. I'm going to be high risk for heart attacks and strokes. And so I knew I had to do something different. And so I knew that it had to be the food. So I thought I knew what good nutrition was, just like everybody else. Read books here and there and thought I knew was good. But then I started actually studying nutrition, the academic side of nutrition, and eventually found lifestyle medicine, the specialty. But I was like, okay, I didn't do it overnight like Charlie did. I went, okay, I need to eat a more whole food, plant-based diet. So I need to center my diet around unprocessed whole plant foods, fruits, vegetables, beans, potatoes, sweet potatoes, intact whole grains like brown rice and oats and quinoa, bulgur, amaranth, farro, sorghum, all these kinds of unprocessed whole plant foods, and start transitioning. But I had no interest in being vegan or vegetarian or anything like that. I just need to move in that direction because that seemed to be what the science really supported. And so I did. I started transitioning, not huge, but moving in that direction. I kind of talk about it as a spectrum. The worst kind of diet would be a standard American diet, and we call the meat-sweet diet. So, all meat and cheese and eggs and dairy products and added oils and sugars and flours, all processed foods. That's like this end of the spectrum. And then 100% whole food plant-based diet, like Dr. Esselstyn teaches for the heart disease patients. That's at the very other end of the spectrum. And so I was like, okay, I was somewhere probably in the middle, and I started moving that direction. And after a year, dropped the 47 pounds, dropped my cholesterol 100 points, similar to Charlie. My A1C went from a 6.2, which is almost diabetes, which is 6.5, down to like 4.7. So completely reversed the prediabetes. The 47 pounds dropped, or my irritable bowel syndrome went away, my heartburn went away. And so it was amazing. I felt amazing. In 2013, the next year, I only rode my bicycle like 3,000 miles that year instead of 7,000. And I still ride about 2,000 to 3,000 miles a year, do lots of walking and stuff. So actually I exercise less, but I got the food right. And so when that happened to me, I was like, was teaching it to patients before that first year when I was doing it for myself. And what kind of emboldened me more at the time was my patients were doing it sometimes more aggressively than I was. And I was like, oh my gosh, your blood pressure's too low. And oh yeah, I get dizzy when I stand up. And yeah, I'm getting low blood sugar. And so I had to start actually de-prescribing medications. And it's one of those things in PA school or medical school, we learn, how to prescribe lots of medications. The pharmaceutical industry really influences our education. So it's pill for every ill. So I know how to do that, add more and more medications, but we really didn't get training on how to de-prescribe because it just doesn't really happen much. And so one of the things when I got board certified in lifestyle medicine, we go to, Charlie and I, we go to conferences and things, and there's lots of actually pharmacists that will actually teach you how to de-prescribe appropriately medication. So that's kind of a new thing, which is kind of sad that it's a new thing. But so I had to start de-prescribing medications for my patients. And so I started really teaching it more, and then you heard the story how Charlie and I met and started teaching classes, and the support is very important. So I just wanted to give you kind of my background, because I think and when we talk about this, it's nutrition's really challenging because food is personal, right? So I've been teaching this now for 12 years. And for myself and for patients is that, if I have a patient I'm seeing in the clinic and let's say they have hepatitis C, for example, and I giving them the recommendations, here's all the tests we need, here's all the things we need to do, blood work, the treatment for this. And so when I go over things like that, just as an example, many other medical problems, my patients don't usually question like, oh, I'm just assuming that's the best treatment, probably the best evidence-based treatment for that particular problem. I don't get pushback. But when I say, hey, here's what the science says about nutrition and here's the changes you should make, oh my gosh, everybody's an expert. It's like, no, that's not what I read. No, that's not. Because, if you think about it, there is a lot of misinformation. There's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry out there, diet books and all these things. But I'm just following the science, just like I do with everything else in medicine, because that's how it is. But when you talk about food and talk about nutrition, everything else comes in. It's mom, it's grandma, it's culture, it's religion, it's part of it's as personal as religion, it's as personal as political affiliation. It's so personal, and so you have to really. That's why nutrition is so challenging, because you have to really take those things into consideration and not get too preachy, not get judgmental. You have to really be careful, but I do try to tell my patients, but this is really what the science supports. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Move in this direction, and because you just got to be really careful with that, and it just makes it really challenging, which is part of the reason Charlie and I do these classes every week, because you just need that reinforcement and that repetition. And I know so many people have heard my story so many times. It's like, or come to the classes. We've had people come to our classes for 5 years, like some people that have been to our classes that we were teaching. I was teaching out in Springfield back in 2018 when I started. And then Charlie and I started doing them online during the pandemic in 2020. But there's people that still come to our classes out at the Irving Grange now that were coming to the classes I was teaching in Springfield in 2018, because it's just kind of a way to kind of feel accountable to your changes and to kind of just be in a community, because so much of it is about community. And so like the blue zones, for example, what's going to make change sustain and what you want is to have an environment around you that's positive, an environment around you that's going to be the right choice. The healthy choice is going to be the easy choice. And so our culture right now does not support eating vegan or whole food plant-based, because watch every street corner and every commercial and everything, bad choices everywhere. And so we have to create our own culture and community to support each other. So I think that's why we do the classes. That's why we do the movie nights we do, and the cooking demonstrations and potlucks and walks and all the stuff we do at Live Lifestyle Medicine, which is the actual brand, the program. And then Eugene Plant-Based Providers is the 501c3 nonprofit that supports the Live Lifestyle Medicine program. So we have information out there on the table, and then also in the vendor hall. If you're new to us, check out the website, livelifestylemedicine.com, and you can sign up for the newsletter and see and participate for free in all the different classes, all the different community events and programs, because we want to build culture and build a community around this, and that's what's going to make change stick. And the other thing too is, it's kind of surprising sometimes you might find is when I have patients that just had a heart attack, cardiac arrest, be resuscitated, or have a really grave prognosis or diagnosis, you can usually get a pretty good diet and lifestyle change for maybe up to 6 months. That's actually what studies show. But what actually shows to sustain long-term changes, years and years, is is what is having purpose and meaning in your life. So, just avoiding something bad from happening, or just to, feel better. I mean, feeling better is important, but, just because I want to get off my pills, or because every patient I ask them, well, what are your health goals? And it's not good enough, just for me anyway, when I'm talking to them, if they say, well, I want to get off my pills, or I just, want to live longer, things like that. Those are good, but what you really got to get at is what brings you meaning in your life. So what things do you value in your life? And then how is what your current health status, how is that keeping you from those things that you value in your life? And that's where you're going to get like the years and years of sustained change. And then also that having that culture of support. So I blabbed on long enough. So let's, show some slides and get a discussion going. Enough about us at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. So are there any questions before we get started here? Any thoughts from anyone? I know some people are shy in big groups, whatever. Yes?
As I make changes, is there a bit of detox? The first time I quit sugar, it was horrific. Then this most recent time, cutting back, I drink more water, and it hasn't been a huge detox. But maybe, I don't need an answer now, maybe that will be addressed.
Do you have any, what's that?
Just detoxing.
Yeah.
Well, just a lot of times average is usually a week or two, but it's different for everybody. So if you're on a really highly processed diet, lots of sugar, salt, fat, all those kinds of things, those foods really stimulate dopamine in the brain. So they're like drugs, basically. And I know Pam will probably mention some of that in her talk coming up after this one. You can feel withdrawals. Just like if you, say you're drinking 4 cups of coffee every day and you suddenly stop drinking coffee, you would have a headache, you wouldn't feel very good. So that's withdrawal, essentially. And so it's the same with these highly processed foods. Are you familiar with the book Sugar, Salt, Fat by Michael Moss? It's a really good one. Talks a lot about it. Or The Pleasure Trap is another good one. Alan Goldhammer and Doug Lyle. That's a good one too. It kind of addresses that very issue. And so, if you go more slowly, sometimes you won't have, with the transition, you won't have those symptoms. But if you went all in, and everyone's different. So some people have more, kind of more food addiction issue versus things.
Like, it is absolute food addiction.
Food addiction, yeah, that's a real thing. Yeah. It just stimulates the dopamine, and so that's the hard part. You make a change like this, and it feels wrong because it's like you're not getting that. It's not, that pleasure center is not being stimulated, and so it doesn't feel right. This is the wrong thing to do. But then it takes some time. Once you kind of get your dopamine sensitivity comes down to a more natural level, and then eating fruit makes you feel good. It's like, oh, this satisfies my sweet tooth, is eating fruit. But if you're still eating even plant-based desserts that are maybe still a little bit too high in calories and processed, you might still be a little bit too high on that. So, but good. That's a good question.
Yeah, our goal is to make sure that you continue to have hope. Do not give up, and do not belittle yourself. It's we get into habits sometimes which provide a barrier. Yes.
I've been eating clean I eat clean 80-20, and I've been doing it for 12 years. I rep for a research center from Europe, and it's dramatically impacted my health. I mean, I'm almost 78 years old, and my lab work, everything. I mean, I used to be an RN, and I'd get stuck in chairs. I had irritable bowel, I had fibromyalgia, I had depression, anxiety, I was overweight. And once you learn about it, what fuels me now, he was asking, what excites you in life? I'm excited by sharing with people the power of food, because how we eat, even a lot of fruits are way too high in sugar. So in the company I rep for, they show ones that are, because of how we engineer them.
So we hope you're coming to our classes sometime to share that. Online or in person, love to have you come share.
You mentioned Dr. Goldhammer. Are there any providers in the area that work with him doing the remote fasting work? And he's, of course, plant-based.
Yeah, no, not that I know of.
True North.
Yeah.
At True North. Yeah, we've got a class attendee that goes to True North periodically for
Yes, over here, and then over here.
I love my olive oil. So what are your thoughts on olive oil?
So, yeah, you know, olive oil lights up your brain, like Scott was talking about, the dopamine kick. Yeah, so the issue with olive oil, do you like white sugar?
No, I don't.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of thing. You've stripped away the one nutrient, the fat, in the oil, and you've left behind what? The fiber of the olive and so many of the other nutrients, and it becomes an inflammatory issue, and it's just a high-calorie thing, which, you know, if you are not having any health problems and you want to have your olive oil, then you'll have it. But if you're taking blood pressure medicine, you have diabetes, you have other chronic pills or any chronic illnesses, you may want to reduce that significantly. That it's a personal choice at that point.
Is coconut
Even
oil
olive
okay?
oil.
Even olive oil. Yeah.
So whenever someone says, is a food healthy or not, it's always going to be, well, compared to what? It's always going to be compared to what? So olive oil is healthy compared to coconut oil or palm kernel oil, many of the seed oils, but that doesn't make olive oil healthy in of itself. So olive oil is not healthy compared to olives, because that's the whole food kind of thing.
Okay, back here next, and then here.
I wanted to address the question about True North Health Center. I recently returned from them. A new feature they have is live TV, and you can go to healthpromoting.com and register, and there's no charge, and you have access to all of their lectures and such, and they do 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock every day, and so you have access to those live lectures, as well as a lot of their previous lectures and documentaries.
Thanks for sharing that. Yes.
I wanted to ask, in the spirit of the olive oil question, in the harm reduction spectrum, is any change towards your end goal viewed as a positive, or is there a threshold where you really have to get to before you're seeing a change?
I sort of got that. Is there any
Different
positive?
with everybody.
Huh?
Just different with everybody.
Yeah, it's sort of, you know, in terms of, is it anything positive associated with oil? Is that what you're asking?
No, I apologize.
I am.
I don't think I was clear. In the spirit of moving towards your healthier eating concepts, is any positive change you're making in that going to be beneficial to your health, even if you can't yet get to these goals that you
Yeah, so if you're reducing the oil, potentially, you may not notice any positive change. Like if you're trying to reduce your blood pressure, reducing it a little bit may be helpful, but not enough to tell.
Not just the oil. She's talking about, so any of that spectrum I talked about earlier. So wherever you are on that spectrum, where's your health? Where are your goals? Where do you want to go? Incremental change is okay. So we can't say what percent or where you got to be. Any one person on that spectrum, we can't say how far on that spectrum you're going to have to go to get to your health goals. It's going to be different for everybody, and so you just kind of have to. And what we're taught in lifestyle medicine, the board certification is, many of you've maybe heard of SMART goals. So it's like basically they're specific, measurable, attainable. They're time restricted. You have a time frame. So you're like, it's very specific. Like, okay, I'm gonna eat more whole plant foods. You have your list, and less of the kind of the red light foods, we call them, the meat, the cheese, the eggs, the dairy, the oils, the processed foods. I'm going to reduce those. I'm going to reduce these ones, and I'm going to increase these ones this next week, and see how that goes. So you can have very specific goals about what you're going to do, or take a 30-minute walk 3 days this week, or whatever it is, you want to just kind of have a goal. And but some people go all in, and like Charlie always says, if you're trying to avoid you're like, you had an angiogram and they're recommending a stent or a bypass, you might want to jump into the deep end and go all in. Whereas if you're just like, I just want to get off of my blood pressure pill, or I want to lose 10 pounds, or be able to do that hike that I haven't been able to do because I just don't feel like I have the physical ability to do it or healthy enough to do it, then you kind of make the changes at your pace that you want to do to get to achieve that goal. So yeah, it can be different for everybody. Might want to show a couple slides before. Okay. All right.
So I I just met with a U of O student. He's kind of a pre-med guy yesterday. We were at a health fair. And he says, I've heard you talk about plant-based stuff, and I want to know about fiber, the benefits of that. And so I started out by asking him, do you know what kind of gas you put in your car? Is it regular? Is it premium? He says, yeah, I put in regular. I said, what if you put in diesel? He says, it wouldn't work so well. I said, so let's start out with, what is your food? We've been on this planet for a long time. And so he says, well, he was thinking. I said, what are your teeth like? There's some anatomic considerations that we've developed over time through evolution. And what are your teeth like? Are they more like the lions and the tigers? Or are they more like an elephant, giraffe, gorilla? He says, well, I guess elephant. They're not lion and tiger teeth. Yeah, those are used for ripping and tearing meat. And so he got that concept pretty, you could see the light go off in his head, like, okay, I get that. And then I said, so how about the length of our intestine? How long is that? It's long. It's over 30 feet. I said, what do we need long intestines like that for? And he says, I don't know. I said, if meat eaters, they have short intestinal tracts, whereas plant eaters, they have long. So now we're kind of getting to the point about why is plant human food as opposed to animals? And he kind of was thinking about that for a while. And then I said to him, you've been watching some TV off and on. You see the commercials. What are they all about these days? Ozempic, Wegovy? Yeah? GLP-1 agonist. What do? They suppress appetite. They decrease inflammation. And I said to him, do you know you can make your own? I actually mentioned this to a doctor yesterday. He had no clue that we can make our own GLP-1. Is there anybody who did not know that we can make our own GLP-1? Yeah, a lot of you. And so let's talk about that for just a couple minutes. How do we make our own GLP-1? There are specialized cells in our ileum, the lower end of our small intestine, that make GLP-1. They make this GLP-1 when they get protein, fat, or carbohydrate dumped in their area. So what happens when you eat animal foods, highly processed foods? They are chopped up really finely, the high processed food. The animal foods have the cell membrane, which is easily broken down by what? Hydrochloric acid, the pancreatic juices, and it gets absorbed high up in your intestinal tract. Doesn't make it down to the lower 30 feet down where the L cells are that produce your own GLP-1, so you don't have to spend $1,000 a month for a drug to lose weight. The science is kind of interesting in this. So how do you get those foods down to that area? You eat foods that have fiber around the cell wall, and that's plants. Only plants have fiber around their cell wall. They do not get digested high up in the intestinal tract. They need to be digested, broken down, fermented by your microbiome, the bacteria in your lower intestine. You all familiar with that? Okay, so now what happens is when the cell wall of the plants get broken down, you get a release of the carbohydrate, fat, and protein down low. And that stimulates the L cells to produce GLP-1. You suppress your appetite, you cut down on inflammation, and you become happy with less illness. simple concept. He was pretty fascinated, this pre-med student, and may have changed the course of what he chooses to do and what he hears. And for the rest of you, it's something to think about, because many of you are eating plants. What happens when you chop a plant up so much into the fine flour? Where does it get absorbed? It gets absorbed high up. So even though you're eating plants, it doesn't mean you're eating the healthiest plant diet. Eating foods as grown in nature is the healthiest option that you can eat. Now, I know you're used to the cakes and the cookies and the muffins and the brownies and the breads and the plant foods, but if you're struggling and not achieving the benefits that you want in your life, just consider how you can make your own GLP-1. That's what I wanted to say about that. We'll see if there's another question, then we want to show you a couple slides.
In the back there, yeah. So glucagon, GLP-1, so a glucagon-like peptide is what it is. It's a hormone. So it's a natural occurring hormone, but like he was saying, it's in our body normally, but you can also inject it. So that's why it's one of the drugs. What say again?
Why do we need that hormone? What's so special about it?
Well, so that's what's gonna suppress our appetite. So there's different hormones: CCK, leptin, ghrelin, GLP-1. There's all these different hormones that are naturally occurring in our body that send signals to our brain telling us when we're full. And there's other mechanisms too besides those L cells in the ileum. It's called the ileal brake, is that location that Charlie was talking about. And so that's where those L cells are. But also we have stretch receptors on our stomach that actually send signals to our brain that we're full. That's what the leptin tells us we're full, for example. And then that's all part of what we call calorie density. So when you have foods that are taking up a lot of space, they stretch your stomach, send those signals to your brain, as well as the GLP-1 down in the ileal brake. So basically our body's natural ability is to say, oh, we're full from mouth to tail. We're full, so we can stop eating. So that kind of that's the signal that we've had enough to eat. So fiber is kind of our signal that we have had enough to eat. Whereas if we're eating a lot of high sugar, salt, fat foods, a lot of processed foods, we're not getting that signal. Plus those foods that are stripped of the fiber, they don't take up very much space. And so they're not stretching the stretch receptors, but they have a lot of calories in a small space. And so that's also part of that. What's wrong?
We're good. We just need to turn the lights on.
Okay. Yeah, let's get a couple slides of content here.
So, can we turn the light? There you go. Good. So we want to see how our foods have changed. If we're going to take a look at what the average American was eating back in the 1900s versus 2010, 100 years later, let's look and see the average amount of sugar. The top line is what? 5 pounds of sugar per year, average amount per person. Look at what it was in 2010. 77 pounds of sugar per person per year. And when you look in the markets, you see those cans of pop, and you can believe there's a lot of sugar in those. And in the processing of the foods, there's a lot of sugar. Look at the oils and fats, 4 pounds to 74 pounds. The cheese, 2 pounds to 30 pounds. When you add up how much fats and oils and sugars, it's no wonder we have 2/3 of our population that's overweight. Fruits and vegetables, we used to grow a lot in our gardens, up to 131 pounds, but now we're down to 11 pounds per person per year in terms of growing things. And look at the fiber. The average amount of fiber in the American diet is 14 grams. And how much did we used to eat? Anybody? 60, 80, 100 grams of fiber for those populations that live the longest and are the healthiest. Okay, so you say the benefits of fiber, there are so many. We just talked about the benefits for GLP-1, but there are other benefits of fiber. It helps hook up the fiber will help hook up with excess toxins, with excess estrogen, with excess cholesterol, so you get reduced heart attack, reduced breast cancer, reduced colon cancer, the more fiber you add to your diet. Plus that fiber, when it gets broken down by your microbiome, produces butyrate, an anti-inflammatory chemical, and serotonin, which is the feel-good hormone. So if you're not getting enough fiber, you are not going to be feeling as happy. Okay? All right, let's go to the next slide. The next slide has to do with a question that all of us get whenever we try to, is it moving? Here, let me see why that's not working. Why isn't that working? That is so weird. The next question, huh? Is that? It's there, but it's like it just decided to blow its brain, huh? Okay, the next question is one that we all get, and we're going to go from right here, the current slide, is where do you get your protein? And here is the next slide. We're going to compare 500 calories of plant food versus 500 calories of animal food. The equal parts of tomatoes, spinach, lima beans, peas, and potatoes compared to equal parts of beef, pork, chicken, and whole milk. Now, for animal products, 500 calories fits in the palm of your hand. Doesn't provide much bulk. For plants, you have to have like a volleyball size. It fills you up. You're feeling full all the time. It's low calorie density. But look at the nutrient value in 500 calories of plants versus animals. Here's the animals here, the plants here. Look at the cholesterol, none in the plant-based foods. The fat, so much less. Look at the protein. It's almost identical. Slightly less in plants, but not so much less that you're not getting about the equal amount. You'll get enough protein if you're eating enough calories. And then look at the rest of these things. The beta-carotene, vitamin C, the vitamins and minerals far outweigh the benefits of eating animal-based foods. And then dietary fiber. Look at no fiber in any animal product. So it's simple to think about some of these things when people ask. They don't have the stats or the statistics, and just focus your attention on eating healthier. I want to make sure that we have any other questions, and if you have something you want, okay. We have 1 minute for another question. You can turn the light back on. Yes, go ahead.
I have high cholesterol, and it's probably genetic. If I have a genetic high cholesterol lab report, can I get it back to normal? Yes, you can get it back to normal. Your genes will not determine. Your genes do not have to determine your destiny. You may have a genetic tendency toward higher cholesterol, but I have seen a number of people who have lowered it very significantly by making the dietary change. Anything else? Yes.
B12.
What?
B12.
B12. Everyone should be taking B12, whether you're a plant eater or a meat eater. We don't have as much B12 in our foods these days. And so take a supplement. If you're under age 65, it's 2,000 micrograms a week, Dr. Greger recommends. And if it's over age 65, it's 1,000 micrograms of cyanocobalamin is what he recommends. That's what we do. Daily. This has been great fun. If you have more questions, we will talk with you one-on-one. If you don't want to attend classes, just send us a note that you need some counseling. And aside from that, come to the classes. And
Exactly when they are again, you said it really fast.
you go to livelifestylemedicine.com. And you will find on that front page, Scott keeps it up and does a wonderful job, and you'll be able to keep in touch with
Yeah, the bottom of the homepage has the full class schedule there, livelifestylemedicine.com. And you can also come visit our booth, or also we have cards out on the table out the door here. So you don't have to write it down or remember it. Just check it out. But thanks everyone for coming. Thank you.